What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over the news that just dropped from the NCAA that is allowing players to officially profit off of their name, image, and likeness, and what this means for the possible return of the NCAA video games that we all used to love. Now, as many of us on this channel have talked about for the past year or so, when all of this kind of talk came about was, if the NCAA agrees to let these players profit off their name, image, and likeness, which they should have been doing for a while now, that this could lead to the potential return of NCAA video games, specifically NCAA football, which many of you know, 2013, the NCAA 14 video game was the last, installment of that series because they had a lawsuit. EA Sports had a lawsuit brought upon them by Ed O'Bannon, a former college athlete, and sued them because they were using his image and likeness in a video game. Now, while EA Sports never used these players' real names, the players that they created resembled the real life counterparts. They had their real jersey numbers and all that as well, so you knew who the players were created to be. And the judge ruled in the players' favor that, hey, you're profiting off of their image and likeness even if you aren't using their real name. So that is the reason we haven't had NCAA games since 2013. But when this news popped up a little while ago that, hey, the NCAA is finally going to let these players earn money, because the issue wasn't necessarily the image and likeness, it was the fact that the players that brought lawsuits forward, they said, you're using this and I'm not getting compensated for it. But the problem is, it's not that EA Sports was against compensating the players, it was that NCAA rules prohibit them from being compensated. So if they want to play for these schools, they legally cannot be compensated. So that was like the roadblock. But now that the NCAA was looking into finally allowing these players to be compensated, we all got excited and said, well, now NCAA football can go back. So today, very early this morning, they dropped some news here, NCAA. It said the Board of Governors moves towards allowing student-athlete compensation for endorsements and promotions. And we'll read a little bit about what this means. It says, at its meeting this week, the Board of Governors supported rule changes to allow student-athletes to receive compensation for third-party endorsements, both related to and separate from athletics. It also supports compensation for other student-athlete opportunities, such as social media, businesses they have started, and personal appearances within the guiding principles originally outlined by the board in October. While student-athletes would be permitted to identify themselves by sport and school, the use of conference and school logos, trademarks, or other involvement would not be allowed. The board emphasized that at no point should a university or college pay student-athletes for name, image, and likeness activities. So the universities would never be paying these players. That was never in the discussion. It was basically, hey, these players are a brand. They're humans. And some of these guys are big name, guys. Even when they're in college, they should be able to get endorsements. They should be able to sell merch, so long as they're not putting the school logo on it, right? It has to be separate from that. But you think of a Zion Williamson when he was at Duke, or you think last year college football guys like Joe Burrow or Chase Young. These guys are really big name guys. They could sell t-shirts or hoodies. They could sign autographs, or like I said, a Zion Williamson. You don't think that companies would have had him endorsing products if they legally could have, because even though he was a student athlete, he was the biggest thing in college sports. He was the next superstar in the eyes of everybody. So people would have been giving him endorsement deals left and right even while he was in college. And when your name and your brand is that big, you deserve to make money off that. Now, that's where the NCAA games come in. We say, okay, well that works for NCAA games, because if they're putting you in their game, EA Sports has openly said they would pay players to be in the game, because it truthfully doesn't cost that much. It doesn't cost that much to pay these players for their likeness. It's not nearly as much as you think. So for EA, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what they would gain from people buying these games. And a lot of people liked NCAA even more than Madden did. It was a huge thing. So it was looking like we could get NCAA games back. Now, here's the other side of the news that dropped today. So here it says, somebody on Twitter that's like a reporter for one of the colleges, he said, Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman, co-chair of the NCAA's working group for name, image, and likeness, said that the working group determined that group licenses for video games are unworkable in college sports. Bad news if you're hoping for the return of NCAA football video games. He also went on to say, per the working group's report, the division should continue to explore whether it is possible to support institutionally managed group licenses for athletically related activities, so it's not out of the question that there could be future NCAA football video games, but it's not imminent. Now, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this because there's a really great article on sportingnews.com, which I will link below, that kind of dives a little bit deeper into this so we can explain kind of what the current state of things are and what are the real possibilities for a future NCAA football video game. It says here, the popular NCAA football video game series is unlikely to return even if the NCAA allows college athletes to profit off their name, image, and likenesses in 2021. Now, that's when this is set to go into motion, is January 2021. So by this time next year, if it was possible, EA could potentially be working on a video game, or they could even be working on it now because they know that this is going to go into effect in January, right? Keep that in mind. But let's continue on. It says, a working group of athletic directors and conference officials suggested that name, image, and likeness rules to the NCAA Board of Governors on Tuesday that could be voted into effect as early as January, but the recommendations prevent EA Sports or any other developer from producing a college football game. Student athletes would not be able to reference trademarks or other intellectual property from the school they attend in any endorsement or sponsorship under the proposal. That could keep NCAA football from being released in the future due to the prevalent use of school logos, uniforms, and other properties in the title. Plus, the lack of player union makes group licensing unfeasible, the NCAA said in the news conference. Here's a quote. It says, it was the group's conclusion that group licenses, which would combine school trademarks with student-athlete name, image, and likeness products like video games, replica jerseys, and even trading card collections, are unworkable in college sports, which is what was reported on Twitter. Jim Cavale, the CEO of the INFLCR, a company expected to help athletes easily find brand partnerships under new rules, said that while the working group's recommendations to the board could be amended in the coming months, its current construction is clear about the future of college football video games. He has participated in conversations with the NCAA, school, and conference officials about the future of student-athlete sponsorships and is familiar with their thinking. Here's a quote that says, right now, group licensing is not part of the plan. That would prevent the video game concept from coming back. This week's recommendations are the first public signal of what the NCAA-approved name, image, and likeness rules could look like, and they put down a marker for future discussion. So, the big issue here is the group licensing. So, I'll kind of explain this in the easiest way possible. There's no union for the players or a players association. So with the NFL, for example, if you take Madden, there's an NFL Players Association. So that means a company like EA Sports, they don't have to directly negotiate with each single player for their name, image, and likeness, which would be a ridiculous task when you think about how many players there are in the NFL. Now, think about college and just how many more players there are in college. It like they said, the word is unfeasible. You cannot directly negotiate with every single college player. And then I know some people are thinking, well, what if you just put just the guys from the biggest schools, the 50 biggest schools? And it's, maybe that's a discussion that could be had, but I don't, again, because of the fact that you still have to negotiate with the schools separately as well. That's the problem. Back when they made NCAA games, there was just one group. They just had to basically deal with the schools because it was a loophole for like the name, image, and likeness thing because they never used the real name. So they were able to kind of get around the fact that they were using player image and likeness, but they weren't using the actual name. So they could just say, oh, like the players just happen to look like the real life guys, but we don't have their name in the game. So it was a little loophole. They only had to deal with the schools. And when you're dealing with the schools, you can deal with that as one big group and say, hey, NCAA, we want to license all the schools with their uniforms and their logos and their stadiums. And that makes the process feasible at that point because you're negotiating and dealing with one entity and as opposed to hundreds. And the same with players. If you're dealing with one entity as a players union, that's much different than dealing with thousands upon thousands and thousands and thousands of players. So that's the big issue, is that with this new deal, there's no group licensing in place currently that would combine all of the players with all of the schools and say, hey, you could deal with this one entity directly and make a deal with however much money it would cost to license it and get it in the game. With the NFL, that's what they have right now. They just they deal with the NFL and the NFL's Players Association. They deal with those two entities, and boom, that's it. They can get all the players in the game. They can get all the teams and the stadiums and the logos in the game. That's also why Bill Belichick is never in Madden, because I believe it's the Coaches Association. He's not a part of that. So that's why he's never in Madden, because they deal with the Coaches Association, or I don't know if it's a Coaches Union. I don't know the exact term of it, but that's what they deal with. Bill Belichick isn't a part of that. So when they make the deal with that Coaches Association, Bill Belichick is not part of it. So they can't put him in the game. Now, I don't know if they could deal with him directly and put him in the game. I'm assuming that they could do that, but maybe he just doesn't want to be in the game is what is my thinking on that. But that is why right now NCAA video games, while it could, like they said, it could happen in the future, because they could look at group licensing down the line, and I think it would be a smart thing to do that. But right now, it's kind of like this is the first baby step in finally allowing players to profit, kind of putting some of the groundwork in. So the group licensing is probably something that it would make sense to come later, because that would be a much bigger task, and like the details of ironing something like that out would probably be a lot more difficult than what they've currently put in place. So that's not to say that an NCAA game can't come in the next 6-7 years, but is it going to come in 2022 like we hoped? At this point, there's literally no way that that could happen. So that is the update. I just wanted to make sure you guys were, up to date with this, because we've been looking forward to this for over a year now, of hearing this decision. And while some of this news was good, ultimately for football video game fans, it's not all good, because the game currently can't return and will not be able to return unless they do some more amending to the rules. So hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please like, comment, subscribe if you're new, and as always, I will see you guys next time.